pig, no soul.
Yeah.
And he saw like you have grown, but he's not soul. Then
This
he
is
said,
the recording of progress. The recording is in progress.
Okay, great. All right, so welcome everybody tonight. Thank you for those joining us and braving the cold, and thank you for those joining us at home in the comfort of their warm apartment buildings or houses. Tonight we're going to talk about something that's a new topic. I've been kind of working on this one for a while. It is a very bizarre case, and as you can see, it was never solved, ever. We are gonna have to go back, way back to the year of 1954. Okay, so we're gonna be talking about a former orphanage that used to be in this town. We're gonna be talking about one of the probably most famous police officers to ever be in this town, and a little 3-year-old girl that goes missing. So let's jump into it. So now, the story starts in the summer of 1954, right, in our tranquil town of North Bergen here, when the Givernaud Orphanage, will become the epicenter of a harrowing event that has or would haunt the community for years to come. Now, the Givernaud Orphanage is this grand 19th century red brick mansion. It was located on Union Turnpike, right off of Tunnelly Avenue. It's in the area of where like Charles Court is today, if you're familiar with that part of town. And it was secluded, it was behind iron gates, and it stood as a refuge for the vulnerable children of Hudson County and beyond. Now, among them was a 3-year-old girl named Sharon Yacko. She is a recent addition to the orphanage. She is only there about a week. She has, and as she was described in the New Jersey Journal, the New York Times, and again, this story like picks up national news coverage. Some of the articles where we were sourcing were from like Fairbanks, like Alaska. Like that's how far this story reached. Now, she's described as having long blonde hair and a pretty child. And it was reported that, you know, and again, this was some of the verbiage they were using in the articles produced at the time, was she brought a touch of innocence to the imposing 3-story structure of the orphanage. So here is little Sharon. Now, again, the photos are grainy. They are out of different newspaper articles. So we had to work with kind of some older material here. Now, let's go to August 7th, 1954. So we get this great quote from the Commissioner of Public Safety, Detective Patrick Sullivan. So he says on that morning, I am in no position to say that the child has been kidnapped. Okay, so let's see how we get to that. So this is the Givernaud Orphanage, okay, prior to it being torn down, just to give us kind of some bearings of where we're operating out of. Now, on the morning of August 7th, the town is thrusted into a state of kind of collective concern when Public Safety Commissioner Patrick Sullivan found himself at the forefront of an investigation into the mysterious disappearance of Sharon Yacko. Now, the morning air, it hung very heavy. There was an uncertainty as Sullivan, accompanied by 18 North Bergen detectives. Every detective in town worked this case. They go with the Sisters of St. Joseph, who operate the orphanage, and they scour the building looking for this child, right? They search the grounds in the area looking for this child. Now, Sharon herself, the last time anybody saw her was at 10:30 on the night before. And that was 2.5 hours after being put to sleep on the 2nd floor of the building. Now, they realized at about 6:30 in the morning that she is not in her bed. That is when Sister Superior, James Marie, will discover the empty space where the little girl should have been. There's this bewilderment that envelops the orphanage as children in the dormitory offer no information about where Sharon is, right? The police are asking, the nuns are asking, nobody has any information on where this girl has gone. So the North Bergen police, their investigation is marked with routine questioning. They question all the children, they question all the nuns, they question every employee that is there at the time. Basically, it's all speculation about the destination, where this kid could have gone, who could have taken her. And the only person that has a bit of mystery about him is a guy by the name of Frank Donahue. He is the cook in the orphanage, and he left at about 7:30. Now, again, he comes back at 9 a.m. in the morning. So this is a great image. This is Sullivan interviewing Donahue at police headquarters. So the case is very well documented. Now, again, the detectives sought to establish a connection between Sharon's disappearance, right? Because Sullivan could not find any tangible link between her and Donahue at this point. In fact, there is no evidence whatsoever left of what happened here. So speculation starts looming about potential destinations. Like they're assuming that she just left. She had to have gotten up and wandered out of the building. Now, North Bergen in 1954 is a lot closer in history to what we're usually talking about. Usually I'm talking about stuff from like the 19th century, the 18th century, when there was nothing here. But in 1954, that neighborhood in North Bergen, there's not a lot going on there. So the Givernaud Orphanage is surrounded by a wooded area. The only things around there are the old Columbia Park, the amusement park, which is just vacant at this point. It's been closed for about 10 years, so there's nothing there. So they're assuming maybe she wandered there. They're thinking maybe she went into the Meadowlands. So they start looking along the banks of the Hackensack and the Chromakill Creek that's back there. They're thinking maybe she's there. Then the idea that, well, maybe she made her way to Tunnelly Avenue or to Hudson Boulevard, right? So somebody might have seen her, maybe somebody has her. So they are going all over that kind of midtown part of North Bergen searching for this child. Now, again, the orphanage is administered by the Catholic Charities. It's got a very long history, and I'm going to try to not undersell it, but I don't really want to dive too much into it. It is given to the Catholic Charities in 1916 by a woman by the name of Barbara Givernaud. Her and her husband had the home built. Her husband, Etienne Givernaud, a French immigrant, built a silk manufacturing plant in North Bergen, down on Tunnelly Avenue. It's no longer, there's no remnants of it. And when she became much older, she donated it to them. And again, now in the hands of the Sisters of St. Joseph, right? This is just a grand structure. This grand residence becomes a sanctuary for those youths, right? With nowhere to go. Now let's go into the investigation. So as this investigation unfolds, like the community's concerns start to grow, right? And rightfully so. There are in almost every church in North Bergen candlelight vigils. There are prayer services also at all of these churches. And again, the fate of little Sharon Yacko remains uncertain, leaving the town in a state of collective anguish, yearning for answers to this mystery that seem to deepen with each passing moment. So now we're only like in day 2 of this, and there is just full on chaos going on in this town. So we get to August 9th finally, okay? And every lead hits a dead end, every single lead. The police, they start to, they're like, let's check on the father, right? Where is he? Who is he? And it turns out he doesn't reside in New Jersey. The Yackos are not from our area, right? They are originally from out in Michigan. So he's not here. He's out somewhere like in the Midwest. So now there's just this other layer, right, of this complexity to this unfolding drama, right? The focus now shifts to Sharon's mother, Anne. So Anne is living in Kearney, okay? She's described throughout the entire investigation as cooperative, but equally as baffled by the inexplicable disappearance of her daughter, okay? Now, again, we're looking at this and you're probably going, well, why is she in an orphanage if her mother is only in Kearney? We don't have any answer to that. In fact, prior to her being in the orphanage, she was staying with a family, the Fosters, in Jersey City. The reason she ends up in the orphanage is the Fosters are going on vacation. So they plan to put her in the orphanage, and when they come back from vacation, they will pick her up. So there's just, and again, I don't know how many people really have a handle on 1950s orphanage usage, but I am equally as confused as all of you. So in spite of all of this, right, in a desperate answer, the police now turn their attention fully on to Frank Donahue, and rightfully so. Donahue has a very troubled history. He's been arrested multiple times. He was in jail for being part of a conspiracy to murder somebody. So, and this actually, him being there and being in this position at an orphanage, a lot of opinion pieces are written by residents about why is he in an orphanage? Why didn't they do a better job, vetting this guy? He's around children. So there was a lot happening. Donahue is, again, he's already in custody. When Sullivan interviews him, he actually charges him with being a disorderly person because he shows up to work at 9 a.m. still drunk from the night before. So he locks him up. Again, he's faced questioning regarding the potential connection to this disappearance. Now, the investigation will expand its scope. They're going to question Sharon's mother's cousin, who is living out in Harrison. Okay, because at this point, they're just assuming the Yacko family has taken the child back without any, formalities. So that is Anne right there, as she, again, in North Bergen Police Department. Now, again, things are going to get more complicated because as the police are investigating, the nuns have to admit that there's an epidemic of measles running through the orphanage. And now we're going to add in this layer that you have a 3-year-old missing and possibly has measles. Okay. Theories emerged and faded about what is going to happen to her. The community, again, once kind of united in hope, now fears that the reality is setting in, that they're not going to find this child. So these theories, again, they're going to grapple with them, right? There's very elusive nature, again, because there's no evidence. There's no, and I'm probably going to go into this again, but there's no ransom notes. There's no sign of forced entry into the orphanage. So this cloud of uncertainty, this mystery is hanging over the town. All right. And it's going to force Sullivan and the detectives of this town to really delve deeper into what is happening. They call in Detective William Taylor of Wayne Township and his bloodhound Joe. And this is where it gets kind of weird. Joe refuses to leave the building. In fact, he keeps going to the 3rd floor of the building, right? They have him pick up Sharon's scent, and he just continuously goes to the 3rd floor. So they check the building again from top to bottom and do not find her. But the dog would not leave the building, right? We then have this great image of Henry Villaro of West New York, a West New York policeman. He gets into a pipe and crawls 40 feet to search kind of all the sewage pipes that are out on West Side Avenue and Tunnelly Avenue at this point. Now, again, the only source of evidence was just that the cellar door of the basement was opened and that there was a footprint in the chapel. Now, according to the nuns, all the doors and windows were locked at the last check of the night. And again, according to them, there was not a footprint in the chapel when they closed for the evening. The search for Sharon continued, again, for 4 days. The investigation still now goes from Donahue to Sharon's mom. And Anne is, again, cooperative with the investigation, claiming she has no involvement or any idea of anybody that would want to take them. Again, they don't really know anybody in the community here. So it's very bizarre. So Sullivan says, we're going to do these things. Okay, he says, number one, we are going to wait on the report from the state police, all right, from the lab that's analyzing the footprint found on the rug in the orphanage. He says, number two, we're going to get legal advice as we want to give Donahue a lie detector test. Okay, again, he says the detectives are going to follow up several new leads, right, in the kidnapping, but Sullivan would not divulge details nor comment on whether they have any major bearing on the outcome of the case. Step 4 was he said the investigation showed that the kidnapper had no specific child in mind. So again, now Sullivan started to think this is just a crime of opportunity. And then when Sharon was taken from the room in which she slept, there were 3 other girls in the room. So it could have been any of those 4 girls in total. Again, he says it seems apparent the kidnapper took the first available child in the most accessible room. For the 5th thing they're going to do, he says detectives are going to still seek to interview the father of the missing girl. They tracked him down to West Virginia at this point. Originally they thought he was in Illinois, and they tracked him down to West Virginia. All right. And then also, they are going to make attempts to question Sharon's maternal grandparents in Michigan. So you have North Bergen police all over the place at this point, trying to track this down. We also have detectives from West New York, from Hoboken, from Union City that are all here trying to figure this out. The Jersey City Police Department offered assistance. The FBI is here, right? The FBI is just kind of sitting on the sidelines because at the time they needed actually a lot of evidence to declare a kidnapping case. So they left it on North Bergen to give them that evidence. Again, Sullivan stated, we are checking on every lead we get, no matter how insignificant or silly the lead may seem. We have to. We've got practically nothing to work on. We're leaving no stone unturned. So again, the lack of clues was their greatest hindrance. No ransom was demanded. There's no clear motive. There's no eyewitnesses except for a 3-year-old girl from the room who said Sharon was taken by a man to the hospital. That's it. That's all we got to work with. Now, search teams continued to search the grounds of the orphanage, the wooded areas, and the meadowlands. Sullivan, though, was convinced that she was not near the building. He's like, she's not here anymore. Like, we need to figure this out. There were some detectives that actually went as far as checking the furnace for any remains of Sharon to make sure that there wasn't some type of foul play or accident. He said, we've gone over every inch in the orphanage. She's not in the building. The FBI was working again unofficially with the North Bergen police, and 13 states had been alerted to search for this girl. Okay, so now it's going to come August 10th. All right, and everybody can take a collective deep breath here because they find Sharon. Okay, and not through any police work. On the evening of August 10th, there's just a sudden turn of events. Sharon, who's been missing since the 7th, is just found on the steps of St. Joseph's Rectory in Union City, okay, at about 11 p.m. She is in a brand new outfit, right? It's a pullover made of seersucker with new shorts and black patent leather shoes. And the only clue we have is the clues are Lucky Stride shoes. Now, Reverend Vincent Frolic of the St. Joseph's Church basically just stumbles across her on the stairs. He is sitting at home at 11 o'clock at night, and there's just somebody rapidly ringing the doorbell at the rectory. When he gets to the door, he just finds a girl shivering, frightened, and no clues of who she is. So he does what anybody would do. He calls the Union City Police Department. They then take her to the Union City Police Department. She does not say a word until Mother Superior James Marie and Sister Zita Marie appear at the Union City Police Station. They identify the child as Sharon Yacko, but as soon as she sees them, she actually says, I'm Sharon. And as she's looking at them, at 11:45, Sharon's mother comes in, right? 35 minutes it takes her to get there. And she identifies, yes, this is Sharon. Again, there is just this reuniting of the daughter, right? Tears are flowing from the eyes of the nuns who grew to love this little girl during her time in the orphanage. The girl's miraculously unharmed, right? The Union City police doctor, Dr. Howard Baldini, he checked her out and said, despite a few scrapes and bruises that she received prior to her disappearance, some mosquito bites, she had a slight case of measles, but other than that, she is perfectly fine. Now, There's Sharon being taken to the police station. They grab their photo in the car. There they are with mom and mother superior. Now, this is being photographed constantly. These pictures are all over the newspaper. So they're capturing every emotional scene, marking this miraculous end to the saga that gripped the community. Now, in the chapel of the Givernaud Orphanage, when they bring Sharon back, nuns and police are reported to have knelt side by side, offering prayers, thanks to her safe return. Commissioner Sullivan comes out after overseeing the investigation, lauded the collective efforts of the police, the volunteer, and even the media for bringing Sharon back alive. And this was reported that in the presence of these hard-bitten police officers, that there were tears of gratitude and relief in their eyes, and that there was this one officer, they didn't report his name, but he had this to say. He said, "It might have been my kid. Every time I ate, every time I tried to sleep, everything I tried to do, I had a picture of that girl in my mind." So again, it is a very touching moment. Now, the Lucky Penny story makes kind of a headline story here. So on the morning of August 10th, okay, we have Detective Ray Francina of the North Bergen Police Department. He just gets back from vacation. So he starts working the kidnapping case. And as he's kind of rummaging around the orphanage, he notices a penny head side up beneath the desk of Mother Superior. And then he even admits well, I put a little, but he wrote very absentmindedly. He picked it up and said, "We're going to break this case today." And then 8 hours later is when they find her. Okay. So Francina, again, kissed the penny to prove that the omen was good luck. And then it's even mentioned in his retirement announcement that he still has the lucky penny several years later. There they are again, back in Mother Superior's office. And there's mom again with some photos. And then those are the Fosters, which are her foster parents, right? Again, they were very ecstatic to have her back. Now, just because she's back doesn't mean this is over. Detectives are eager for new leads. They begin canvassing merchants in the area to trace the origin of the clothes Sharon is wearing, because they're hoping to ID or at least get a description of the kidnapper. When questioned, Sharon innocently revealed, a man bought them for me. Okay, so we have this investigation continue. Okay, again, she has these clothes the kidnapper purchased for them. Now, the investigation refused to rule out other theories, such as the possibility that Sharon was kidnapped by a childless couple, or the individuals involved in a baby adoption racket. So there was still a lot on the table for what could have been the possibility. Now, Patrick Sullivan refuses to give up on this case. So he's actually going to be described during this investigation as big as a bull and as smart as a fox. So it is, he was a big dude, very large man, but he never gave up on this. So even in the face of widespread fear and uncertainty, Sullivan insisted while the case was going on, "I'm sure the girl is alive," right? He had a lot of optimism here. He is a real North Bergen guy. His grandfather was the first chief of police in the town. Again, he also gets a legacy for trying to solve very challenging cases. He's known for taking on all the unsolvable cases in town. And apparently he approached this case with equal determination to figure out what happened. So throughout the time Sharon's missing, he interviews 40 to 50 people by himself, right? Expressing the sentiment, "It's too bad we can't reach the kidnapper. The heat is on and we're going to make it tough for him." And again, Sullivan was pretty smart. He had every quote he had about this case put on the front page of the paper. So he really used the media to try to scare out maybe who kidnapped this girl. And ultimately it worked, because they returned her. Now, again, the investigation persists, and Sullivan dedication remained unyielding. He vowed to wrap up this challenging case, ensuring that no other child would fall victim to the same elusive kidnappers. The community held its breath as the search continued, and Sullivan's determination echoed through the corridors of law enforcement. There's another image of him again, with jacket on, interviewing Donahue. However, the passage of time does not bring closure to this case. Even though Sharon is found, they can't find this person. There is no evidence, there's no trail. They have a 3-year-old witness who can't recall where she was. Again, this is going on, and Sullivan will work on this case until he retires in 1955. He stays on as a senior grade detective and then steps down. He served for 25 years. And even he says, like, I'm still looking for the kidnapper after he retired, that he still did not give up, that he could find this person. And then even in his obituary, it says he was haunted by the regret of not solving the Yacko kidnapping, right? So that's something that stuck with him for the rest of his life. Now, again, that's it, right? And the mystery of Sharon Yacko's disappearance, right? Her subsequent return, right? They remain etched in the town's history, a little hidden. The tales of anguish and resilience and the unsolved enigma that lingered in the hearts of those who had hoped for answers, but found only the passage of time. So that is what I have for you folks. I will gladly take some questions. Go ahead.
You know if she's still alive.
So I did try to find out if she was still alive. I cannot find any of the Yacko family. We had a couple of addresses for places in Detroit, but they have long changed hands. So I guess the search for Sharon Yacko still continues in some sense, but I mean, it's possible. I think she would be 72, 73 years old. So she was 3 years old in 1954. So she was born in 51, right? So it's theoretical. She's still alive. Yeah. So we'll have to. Right, exactly right. So if she gets married, and I did try that. I did try to search some newspaper archives from Michigan to see if the name would come up. Nothing came up. I tried to search some kind of tax records, but they were hit or miss with years and things like that. And you know, we're kind of at the, we don't have a 1960 census to go through yet to get another address or maybe another next of kin or something like that. I searched Anne, found nothing. Searched the grandparents, found nothing. But again, the records are limited at this point.
Did she live with those family, that foster family that was supposed to take her?
Sure. So after all of this, she actually packs up everything on like August 17th and they go back to Michigan. And then that's it. Her name appears maybe every other year in the newspaper in August, that this case is still not solved. That, oh, the second anniversary of the Yacko kidnapping, but there's no reference to her. It's just reference to like the police still doing their job and trying to figure out who did it. But yeah, I don't know. Hopefully maybe through the power of the internet here, Sharon will hear about this. Go ahead.
Did Donahue ever go back to work there?
Donahue did not go back to work there. He actually had an alibi. He was out partying. Well, he had 2 witnesses that placed him out all night. However, to add a little more air of mystery to this, they could not account for Donahue after 7:30 in the morning. Right? So they said they went out all night. He left at about 7:30, and then we don't know where he went for those hour and a half until he showed up to work. So it could be something. We know that the nuns reported that the door was open. They found it open at 6 a.m. Alibi for Donahue was he was with these 2 women until 7:30 a.m. So I don't know. But Donahue actually goes back to jail for about several other things in and out of the rest of his life. So no, he doesn't seem to go back to work at the orphanage, but he does seem to go to prison for a while.
Nothing panned out with asking the merchants about clothes.
No, and the searching for the clothing actually starts local. So they did every shoe shop on Bergen Avenue, they reported. They go to every girl's dress store on Bergen Avenue. And then they start figuring, well, maybe it is Anne that took her. So they go out to Harrison and they go out to Kearney and they go out to North Arlington. They start canvassing stores in Newark. They cannot find anybody. There's a couple of people who are like, I think it was my store. And then they bring the shoe in and they're like, well, we don't sell this shoe. So it's not us then. They received an alarming amount of tips. A lot of anonymous tips were coming in about people, and they investigated every single one of them. There was one person where they found an address book. Well, actually, let me rephrase that. They found a stolen car. In the glove box was an address book. One of the addresses was Ann Yacko's address in Kearney. When they found the owner of the car, they said, why is this address in your car? And he said, I had a date with that woman. And then it turned out, yes, Ann did have a date with him and he picked her up. And that's why he had the address. So there really was nothing to explain who could have took her, why they would have took her, and how. Unless there was one theory they had that somebody hid in the building the night before and waited and then took her. And that kind of fed into the idea that maybe it's a family that was trying to adopt a child and couldn't. And again, that kind of tied back into what they found her in. They found her in brand new clothes. And they even note, and for everybody who has children, you buy shoes for a small child a little bigger anyways, because they're going to grow into it. So they even theorized that maybe they bought the shoes prior, just guessed at a shoe size and said, well, if it's a little too big, she'll grow into it. And again, it's 1954. So even if this person did succeed, nobody might have ever even known like what happened to her and give her a different name or different identity. One thing I guess I got to bring up too, because this was, and again, this is the Law and Order Special Victims Unit person in me, right? She was not in any way harmed in that manner. And actually Sullivan goes out and it's in the paper, it's reported as, we are looking for every deviant and sex fiend in the county. So I was like, man, 1950s reporting did not pull any punches. But they went and they said they canvassed everybody they knew that was convicted of crimes similar to that and searched their homes. Again, whether they had warrants or not, that wasn't reported. But they said no home had any evidence of the girl. Again, she just kind of shows up randomly in the middle of the night, which is, it's a bit of a miracle. They did start to canvass after her discovery. They figured maybe she was in Union City for a while, because now we're down at St. Joseph's, which is down on like 15th Street-ish, down that way. So it was outside of where they were searching. They said, maybe it's somebody down here. They could not find anything, couldn't find anybody.
We're set back from the road, the picture, right?
Right, the orphanage is set back from the road.
Get in and out to inspect it.
I would assume if it wasn't like a great, it's not the Great Wall of China. It was just an wrought iron fence that you could have probably just hopped right over, right? Also, the back of the property had no fencing, right? It just went into the woods. So you could have just ran in and kind of made your way onto the property. Right, could be.
She didn't put up, there was no yelling or screaming, so she had nothing.
Right.
She knew what it was.
Of course.
And she could have said it was honey.
It's impossible. We may never know.
She said,
Nobody did ask.
okay, 3 years. If you are 3 years, you can still stay down.
So she is very tight-lipped, and she actually will not speak to men during the investigation. The nuns actually act as a proxy to ask her the questions the police wanted to ask her, because she would not speak. She would not speak to Sullivan. She wouldn't speak to any of the detectives. She kind of just was like, yeah, she might have been afraid of them. Again, I don't know. The track, right? And it's big guys, right? And there's probably a bit of franticness to them, trying to figure out what's happening. You have her mother, who's kind of actively wanting to leave North Bergen and go back to Detroit. So I think that, she's a 3-year-old being pulled in about 40 different directions. So it might have just been maybe overwhelming. I don't know. Anything online? No questions?
No question.
Wow.
Wow, it's weird.
Did I put him to sleep? Maybe I put him to sleep. I hope not.
Somebody has to knew where to go, because somebody has to know where is that and how to get to that.
No, of course. I mean, and listen, in the evidence, even though there is not a lot, Donahue seems like the guy. I mean, it does, but there's no motive. Right. And that's the one thing that's missing on Donahue. And that's even reported that they can't figure out why he would do it. Right. There's no reason for him to have done it. And especially to show up to work the next morning. Right. So that was kind of the thing. Like, if you really were to kidnap a kid, why would you show up to work the next morning? Knowing they're going to be looking for him. Also, again, he shows up still drunk from the night before. So I don't think he even had his wits about him to pull a crime like that off. Especially knowing that she was changed into brand new clothing. So I don't know. It's one of those ones, man. We may never know.
We do have a question from the chat.
Sure.
Is this an uncommon case during the time?
Yeah, kidnappings were not that common. Any kidnapping that was reported was usually like a kid ran away and like came home like 4 days later. So this is front page news, like not just here locally, like this is front page news like nationwide. It's heavily reported obviously in the Detroit area because that's where her family is. It's covered by all the major New York papers. Chicago's covering it, LA is covering it, and everywhere in between is just running the AP stories that are coming out. So, I mean, just from that alone, I don't think this is that common to happen, because it was, again, the entire nation is following this from the 7th until at least really like September 1st. This is still being covered because they want to know who is the guy who did this, or people who might have done this.
Another question in the chat. Is the evidence still available for any DNA testing?
That I have no idea. Again, I don't know, because in 1954, they're definitely not DNA testing. And again, the only evidence they have is a footprint. And the building is gone, right? And I would have no idea if the state police lab would have kept something like that, or even what materials they might have been given. And aside from that, the only other evidence would have been the clothing and the door handle. And again, there was no reporting on fingerprinting, but even if they did, it's not like they had a system that they could check, right? It would have had to all be manual, or get a suspect and double check it, cross-reference it. And again, the clothes, they're just kind of assumed they're brand new clothes. Which most of them were, because they checked the tread on the shoes and it still had the brand new bottoms, even from her theoretically wearing them just for that night when they dropped her off somewhere. So for the evidence wise, I'm not sure where it is. Sure.
Is the footprint on the carpet an adult or child's print?
So it's an adult print. But again, there are so many people in and out of that building early on that they really don't know. Even Sullivan said that could have been any of our footprints going in, until someone just said, oh, look, there's a footprint. It could have been a footprint even from the night before that just they didn't see. So the footprint was given at least some credit, but there wasn't a lot of hope they were going to figure out who it was by, anything left on there.
So the FBI never got involved?
FBI does not get involved. There's never enough evidence to call it a kidnapping. And then she shows up and they're like, we're done here. And they move on to the next case. But they were actively engaged, because, and again, that kind of goes to the question earlier. This is not that common that the FBI shows up to North Bergen to find a missing kid, right? That's not normal, right? So usually a local issue, but they're looking at it from a larger scale. Sure.
Why was the building demolished? 1954 is not that old for a building.
Sure. Well, the building is not built in 1954. The building is built like in 1890. It actually will stand there probably until like the mid 70s, and then it's leveled because the orphanage closes down. Sisters of St. Joseph charity it moves on, And then the church sells the property and a developer bought it and put, I believe there's 12 homes there now. Sure.
Did Sullivan, in the end, have any theory that he believed might have been the truth?
So not that we could find, I mean, we know he worked on it until the end, right?
Because
And just,
usually they give it, like, just in the end, even though
Right.
it's solved, usually they have some theory that would.
right, yeah, I mean, there's nothing reported on, I mean, I think just from how much time he spent with Donahue, I think he thinks Donahue did it. Or at least knew something about it. Again, Donahue was like a real shady character, right? He's he's into robbery. He was involved in a murder. He's involved with like a lot of shady people. So I think Sullivan might have thought he knew or might have had some hand in getting this done, but there was just never enough to really hammer it down. So I don't know if Sullivan had anybody actually in mind. But he handled every interview. Like every single interview he handled. So not sure if that says like, hey, he had a guy, or maybe he really did not have anybody, which is why he was so active in the interviewing.
But she was eventually returned, probably
Yeah.
because her picture was on every.
Pictures in the
newspaper
newspaper,
across
right?
the country.
Right. There's cops all over the place looking for her.
I mean,
So
even if it was a backdoor adoption.
right,
You
right.
know.
Now you can't keep this kid. You have to you have to bring him back. So it could have been that, right? It could have been somebody just going in and taking her and then trading her off, or the family taking her. We don't know. Sure.
Did Donahue have family and were they interviewed?
So Donahue, there's no reports of Donahue's family being reported. He is single, he's not married, right? Again, so there's really no information outside of what the reports say about him being interviewed. There's no mention of his family being looked into, which I mean, maybe they weren't, or maybe they were and there was nothing there. But we don't have a lot of information on Donahue to really base any assumption right now.
And another question, I feel like you answered it already. but
Okay.
just to repeat the answer,
Sure.
I'm gonna ask it again. Do we know where she is today? Being had 7 years.
Yeah, no, so we kind of know she ends up back in Detroit as a young kid, but then after that, we cannot find her. So again, but she might have been married, right? Changed the name, that changes everything. So no, unfortunately, we don't know where she is, but it's a good chance she is still alive, so. And she'd be 72, right? So.
Was that a big orphanage, or like numbers, do you know how many people?
Givernaud was a pretty big orphanage. I've received a couple of people who have said like, oh, my grandfather was there, or my parents were from there, you know, but there's no records left for with us. The St. Joseph's would probably have them, but it was an active orphanage. I mean, from 1916 to the 70s, like that's a long time for an orphanage to be in operation.
And what happened with her parents? Actually, why she ended up in that orphanage? What happened with them if her mother was in touch with the
Right. So
that family or her father? Did they kind of follow what happened?
Yeah, so that is something I tried to find out, because that's weird to me too, that like she's in Kearney, but she's with the mom is in Kearney, but she's with a family in Jersey City, and then she ends up in an orphanage because they're going on vacation. Dad's somewhere else and grandparents are here, but there's no like reason given for why this is happening. And I think that's going to go back more to kind of just like the era that the reporting is done in, where they didn't air as much dirty laundry, the personal issues families went through, comparable to today, that you would get an entire, build out of everybody's family when something goes wrong. But I think it's just, that's more of a different era where the reports are going to be like, we're just going to leave out your personal problems out of this for right now. I mean, her mom held down a job, right? It wasn't like, they were migrant workers of some kind or anything like that, but there is no real explanation to why they are all scattered out amongst each other, amongst the area.
Because it doesn't make okay, sometimes parents gave up on the child, but kind of, if anybody knows, if she ever get in touch with that family to see how her daughter is.
Right.
Maybe we could find out about her to her mother. When she died, she ever, or father, or grandparents after that, if they ever went like that and if anybody was in touch with that child, or just they gave up on her daughter.
Well, that's an interesting point, because when she's brought back to Detroit, her aunts and uncles come to pick her up from Detroit and drive back. So it seems like the family is not like some like dysfunctional, falling apart family. It seems like there's some type of cohesiveness amongst them, but just something happened with mom when she got, I don't know. I don't think they were thinking the school systems, anything like that.
Like, if they found out that her address with this other man, maybe she had some kind of affair that actually brought, like, I think so. Maybe this could happen and she was maybe punished for all that, but actually, like, maybe I was thinking mothers still, like, most of the time don't give up on the child, even they are not in touch, but they still try to find out what's going on, so they never really follow the mother. Because, or father, one of them had maybe interest in the child, or grandparents, and
Right.
so that these three things they should maybe follow to see what happened with her.
Yeah, again, it's just, you got grandparents in Detroit, you got a dad in West Virginia, and there's no way they could have done this, right? And no way they could have done it enough to drive back and then drive back and drop her off again. So, yeah, that would have been.
Mother was
Right, the mother might have been involved, but there's no evidence that ties her to this either, because she willingly cooperated. Like they said, there was no problems. They said the only thing that gets mentioned is like she just seems very confused about the whole thing. But again, there's no explanation of why why Sharon is with any of these people, other than she goes missing from an orphanage. And that's really where the story picks up.
Do you know how young her mother was? Maybe she was young, maybe that's why the kid was putting in work.
I mean, they never reference the age of the mother. I mean, and again, trying to base off of like the images. I mean, it really depends. Like she does look maybe like she's relatively young, right? It could be maybe something like that, but there's not like teen mother loses daughter. Like it's not one of those headlines, it's, so again, it's hard to tell from a grainy 1954 image, especially not knowing like where they might be from. Because like we even tried to search and find Ann Yacko in Detroit, and then midway through searching, I'm like, Yacko's not her last name, that's her married name. So I was just searching for nobody at this point, right? So again, we'd have to figure out her maiden name to figure out who she was, right? Or what year she might have been born to explain something like that. But I think that's part of this whole mystery. And I think that's what complicates, or what complicated it so much when it happened, is that there's no real, nobody knows them. Yeah, they're not locals. Nobody has any idea who these people are. So this really could have been anybody. This could have been them. It could have been a random person. It could have been Dunning. It could have been anybody. And I think because there's no ties to the actual community, it's even harder to figure this out. And it's probably even worse today to try to figure out, because we have about one person possibly left.
Was that like the orphanage for all Hudson County, or did each town have an orphanage?
No, so that's just the St. Joseph's Orphanage. Not every town had one, but if you were a kid probably from the northern end of the county, you most likely ended up there. Your alternatives, there was an orphanage in Belleville as well, and then there was one in Bayonne. So there was a few, all Catholic charity ran. The state didn't really run, or local town municipalities didn't run orphanages. Sure.
What brought the applicant to North Bergen?
Yeah, so again, the only reason we know Sharon is in the orphanage here in North Bergen is because her foster family wants to go on vacation. That's how this starts. So again, her mother doesn't even live in North Bergen. The mother lives out in Kearney. So it is just this mishmash of this family having whatever issue or whatever it is. And we only find out because Sharon is kidnapped. If she's not,
Family lives in town?
no, none of them lived here. That's the thing. So again, it's 1954. You probably had better job opportunities here than maybe Detroit. I'm not really sure what the economy of Detroit was like in 1954, but you had a lot of industry here in the 50s, right? You had a lot of embroidery industry. So she might have made her way here for work. We could see that her dad, or the father of Sharon, he seems to be going where work is as well. He's out in West Virginia, right? So there is, I guess maybe there's this idea of like, we're going to go where the money is. We're going to work and Sharon will be taken care of by somebody else. This is my theory. I don't know nothing. I just work here.
I'm just curious, were you able to find out how long Donahue was working as a cook?
So it said
before?
Donahue was working there for 4 years
And nothing.
and
before
nothing for that. So,
that. Yeah, that's,
so again, right, it kind of adds the idea that like, all right, like he was there for 4 years. It's a steady job. It's not a terrible job. He's just cooking all day. Like, there's the alternative for a guy with a criminal record, like a gig cooking in an orphanage is probably as good as it's going to get.
But you know what, if he was really criminal, she wouldn't be alive. Like, because, you know, they are like that. I don't think they would just return her like that. Because this kind of people, they put to your mind to do something, they would do something. You know?
No, exactly. Yeah.
You know, so I don't think maybe it's him. Or he could help somebody. I think it has to be something with mother. And maybe that guy that she works with, you know, that she has her address, maybe he's taking it.
Could be.
That is, because child, it doesn't really talk, they always try to protect parents, you know, it's one way.
It's true.
Like only if somebody like tell that your parents get hurt somehow, if you say something, then child is always silent in that.
Sure. Well, listen, I did.
Somebody really scared her.
They didn't use the social workers like they do.
No, not to. There's no records of anything. No. Yeah.
So that they can figure out things.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, I did listen. I threw out some feelers to some people. The power of the internet. So I messaged some people out there in Michigan and say, hey, I'm interested in this person. You know, here's the information. Somebody help me out. So I'm still waiting to hear back. If I do,
oh, you have.
I will let everybody know what I can find. We found Sharon Yacko. So yeah.
The dog here, we never found out, right?
What's that?
The dog.
The dog again continuously went to the 3rd floor of the building.
Yeah.
And again, it's a building from the 19th century in 1954. There's no fire escapes on this thing. Like, so it's not like, oh, they went upstairs to go outside. Like, it's not one of those deals. They kept going. The dog kept going up the same set of stairs into the same room. And they found nothing.
Yeah,
Nothing.
that's-
No evidence, no nothing.
That was funny.
Right. That's a weird one that the dog. No, and it wasn't her room. No. So,
He had her scent in that.
right. More kind of a twist and turn to the case, which again, why I think it was so difficult for them.
Earlier.
Right. She could have been in there
Listening
the
under.
first day, going play in a room with a kid or, right. Exactly. Right. So, right. Exactly.
Another question from the chat, I think you already answered this one, but again,
Sure. Yeah.
was it common practice for parents to just leave their kids in an office?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I can't speak to that. So I don't know what. I'm sure it was semi-normal considering people's circumstances, right? But there's no information on why Sharon leaves, or excuse me, why Sharon is left with the Fosters. And the only reason we know she's in the orphanage is because the Fosters have to admit they're going on vacation and they put her there. That's all we have to work with. So for everybody else, I mean, the Givernaud Orphanage was pretty crowded. I mean, you had 4 kids to a room, right? So again, it's a 3-story building, and the top 2 floors are where the orphanages was. So the first floor were like dining halls and the chapel and the nuns' quarters and things like that. we probably had, I think the one report on like the building being built, but it was like a 19 or 20 room like building. So yeah, it was a huge building. The Givernaud had a lot of money. I'm sorry.
The picture showed that.
Right, yeah, I mean, it's a large building somewhere eventually. There we go. Yeah, it's a big building. Like it's an impressively large building. And again,
That was a home.
that was one person's home, yeah. And again, if you ever look like where Charles Court is, it's a huge piece of property in there with all those homes off of Union Turnpike. All right, but that's all I got for you guys today. Thanks for coming out and yeah, no, thank you. And then
The big question is, how did you ever come across this? You said it was by accident.
yeah, I don't even remember what I was looking for. It wasn't as interesting as this. That's why we're talking about this. Yeah, it was just a total turn of events. I don't even know what I was looking for at that point. And I saw this like on the front cover of the paper. I was like, what is this? Yeah, what is this? And then that's it, down the rabbit hole, and that's it. I'm gone. But next month we will do everybody's favorite. No. Well, that is everybody's favorite. No, we will do and everybody laughs at me now because I'm not a believer. All right, but we will do the UFOs of North Bergen next month. And I will ask people to prove me wrong that there are aliens in the park. So on that note, thank you for coming. Thank you for joining us online. Have a wonderful holiday season and enjoy the new year. Thank you, everyone.